February 12th, 1945. 6 meters beneath a frozen field near Prüm, Germany, the world is a constant low tremor. Anneliese Schmidt, a 20-year-old Luftnachrichtenhelferin, presses her palms against the concrete wall of the communications bunker, feeling the vibrations travel up her arms and into her teeth. Each distant detonation of American artillery is a punctuation mark in the slow death of her world. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth, ozone from the radio equipment, and the stale breath of 6 other women, tastes of metal. Above her, the Hermann Göring division is being systematically torn apart. Down here, her job is to listen to the chaos, to pluck coherent orders from the shrieking ether and relay them to ghosts. The Siemens T-52 teleprinter rattles, spitting out another frantic message of retreat and regrouping, but the words are just ink on paper. They mean nothing when the ground itself shudders in protest. Beside her, Greta, a girl from Hamburg who still spoke of the sea, works the Enigma machine with a mechanical calm that Anneliese finds both unnerving and admirable. Her slender fingers dance over the keys, encoding messages for units that likely no longer exist. The only light comes from bare bulbs hanging from wires, casting long, dancing shadows that make the cramped space feel like a living throat, slowly closing. The hum of the diesel generator is their only constant companion, a mechanical heartbeat against the arrhythmia of the barrage. Anneliese adjusts her headset, the cold leather pressing against her ears. Static. A man's voice, screaming in German, cut short by a sound like tearing fabric. More static. The front line, once a neat line on a map pinned to the wall, has dissolved into 1,000 tiny, desperate battles fought in snow-filled craters and the skeletal remains of farmhouses. You can feel the futility of it all seeping through the concrete, a cold more profound than the winter air. She looks at the other women. They are all so young. Flakhelferinnen and signals auxiliaries, pulled from their homes by a promise of patriotic duty, now trapped in a concrete tomb, their gray-blue Luftwaffe uniforms smudged with dirt and fatigue. Their faces, pale in the yellow light, are masks of concentration, a fragile defense against the terror that bubbles just beneath the surface. A shell lands closer, not the deep, resonant boom of the 155mm long toms they have grown accustomed to, but a high-pitched, terrifying shriek, followed by a violent crack that feels as if it has split the earth right beside them. The lights flicker violently, dust and pebbles rain down from the ceiling. A woman in the corner, Ilsa, stifles a sob. Anneliese's own heart hammers against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She grips the edge of her console, her knuckles white. The generator sputters, its rhythm faltering. The hum dies. For a horrifying second, they are plunged into absolute darkness, and a silence so complete it rings in their ears. The only sound is Ilsa's ragged breathing. Then the emergency battery lights kick in, casting the bunker in a ghastly, weak red glow. The world has turned to blood. In this crimson twilight, Greta is still trying to send her message, her face a mask of grim determination. But the radio is dead. The teleprinter is silent. Their last connection to the command structure, to the Reich, to any semblance of order, has been severed. They are alone. Anneliese tastes the dust in her mouth, dry and gritty. She imagines the American soldiers up there, moving through the shell-pocked snow, their faces grim, their M1 Garans held at the ready. She has seen them in the propaganda newsreels, portrayed as gangsters and savages. Now they are no longer an idea. They are a physical presence, just meters of frozen soil away. Another explosion, this one directly overhead. The shockwave is a physical blow. It throws Anneliese from her stool, her head cracking against the leg of the steel console table. The world swims. A high-pitched whine screams in her ears. Through a haze of pain, she sees the heavy steel blast door at the end of the corridor buckle inward, its massive hinges groaning in protest. A spiderweb of cracks appear in the concrete around the frame. Someone is screaming, a thin, sharp sound of pure animal fear. The tremor is no longer in the ground. It is inside her. A final deafening blast rips the air apart. The steel door, their last shield against the storm, is torn from its moorings and thrown into the bunker like a discarded toy, followed by a blinding white flash and a wave of superheated air that smells of cordite and death.
The silence that follows the explosion is more terrifying than the noise. It is a dead silence, filled with the ringing in Anneliese's ears and the acrid smell of high explosives. She pushes herself up, her vision swimming. The red emergency lights paint a scene from a nightmare. The bunker is a wreck of overturned equipment, scattered papers, and terrified women. Greta is on the floor, a dark stain spreading across her uniform jacket, her eyes wide with a surprise that will never fade. Ilsa is curled into a ball, whimpering. Through the mangled doorway, a gray, wintry light spills in, along with a cascade of dirt and snow. And then, silhouettes. Two figures stand in the breach, framed against the daylight. They are large, much larger than she expected, clad in unfamiliar olive-drab uniforms and strange bowl-like helmets. They are holding rifles, not the elegant Kar 98Ks she knows, but shorter, thicker weapons, M1 Garands. One of them shouts something in a language she doesn't understand, a harsh, guttural command. It is English, the language of the enemy. The propaganda images flash through her mind, the grinning, gum-chewing degenerates, but these men don't look like monsters. They look exhausted. Their faces are smeared with grime and stubble, their eyes hollow. Sergeant Frank Meller of the 28th Infantry Division, a man from Ohio who hadn't seen a warm bed in 2 months, steps carefully over the twisted metal of the door. His rifle is level, sweeping the room. He sees the dead woman by the radio, the others huddled in terror. They're just kids. Most of them look younger than his own sister. His platoon had been clearing this sector for 2 days, rooting out pockets of resistance in the frozen mud. They'd expected battle-hardened SS fanatics in this bunker, not a half-dozen female auxiliaries. "Hands up, Hände hoch," he barks, using one of the few German phrases he knows. His voice is hoarse from shouting over the din of battle. Slowly, shakily, Anneliese raises her hands. The other women, seeing her, do the same. The soldiers move into the bunker, their movements economical and professional. They are not gentle, but they are not brutal either. One of them, a corporal with a tired face, checks on Greta and shakes his head grimly. There is nothing to be done. Another soldier begins to herd the remaining women towards the ruined exit. "Rouse, move," he orders, gesturing with his rifle. The cold air hits Anneliese like a physical shock. After hours in the stale, recycled air of the bunker, the winter morning is breathtakingly sharp. It smells of snow, pine, and cordite. The world outside is a monochrome ruin. The placid field she remembers is gone, replaced by a hellscape of craters and shattered trees. The sky is a flat, unforgiving gray. A light snow begins to fall, dusting the churned earth and the motionless forms of German soldiers scattered across the field. Her comrades, men she had shared coffee with just yesterday. Now they are just part of the landscape. A wave of nausea washes over her. You are a prisoner. The thought is stark, absolute. The rules she had lived by her entire life have just been erased. She and the other 5 surviving women are marched across the frozen ground, their thin-soled shoes slipping in the snow. They walk past an American Sherman tank, its engine rumbling, its long cannon pointing towards the smoldering German lines. The sheer, overwhelming power of the Allied war machine is laid bare. It is a force of nature, and they had been standing in the path of an avalanche. They are marched for what feels like hours, a silent, defeated column of gray ghosts in a white world. The American guards do not speak to them, only occasionally urging them onward with gruff commands. The cold sinks in Anneliese's bones, a deep, aching chill that no uniform can repel. But worse than the cold is the hunger. It is a familiar companion, a dull ache that has been with her for months as rations grew thinner and thinner, but now, sharpened by fear and exhaustion, it is a ravenous beast gnawing at her insides. They pass a field kitchen where American soldiers are lining up with mess kits, the smell of coffee and frying bacon hanging in the air. It is a scent from another universe, a memory of life she can no longer imagine. The aroma is so potent, so full of warmth and comfort, it is almost painful. One of the women in her group stumbles, weak from hunger, and is hauled back to her feet by a guard without a word. I look at the faces of my captors. They are not monsters. They are just men. And that, somehow, is even more terrifying.
The collection point is the gutted shell of what was once a village schoolhouse. Its roof is gone, blasted away, leaving the soot-stained brick walls to frame a rectangle, bleak gray sky. This is their prison. Snow has drifted into the corners of the courtyard, and a cold wind whistles through the empty window frames. Anneliese and the other women from the bunker are pushed into the crowded space and left to fend for themselves. There are hundreds of others here, Wehrmacht soldiers, Volkssturm old men with ancient rifles, and more women in the gray-blue of the Luftwaffe auxiliaries and the field gray of the army. Their faces are a uniform mask of shock, resignation, and bone-deep weariness. The sheer scale of the collapse is overwhelming. This isn't a setback, it's an annihilation. Anneliese finds a spot against a relatively intact wall,
pulling her thin coat tighter around her. The stone is freezing, but it offers some protection from the wind. She huddles together with Ilse and two others from her unit. They don't speak. There is nothing to say. The language of hope has been exhausted, and the language of despair requires too much energy. All that remains is the dull animal instinct for survival. To stay warm, to remain upright, to breathe. American guards patrol the perimeter, their boots crunching on the rubble. They are efficient, detached. They are processing a product, and that product is the defeated German army. You watch them, trying to read their faces, to guess your fate. Will they be shot? Sent to a camp in Siberia as the propaganda threatened? Or worse? The fear is a physical thing, a cold knot in the pit of her stomach that tightens whenever a guard's gaze lingers on them. She sees an American officer with a clipboard speaking to a captured German major. The major stands ramrod straight, his face a stony mask of aristocratic pride, but his uniform is torn, and his eyes betray a flicker of fear. Even the leaders are lost. There is no one left to give orders, no one to tell them what happens next. Time loses its meaning. The gray light of morning bleeds into the deeper gray of afternoon with no discernible change. The cold is relentless. It creeps through her worn leather boots, up her legs, settling deep in her marrow. The hunger has evolved beyond a simple ache. It is now a dizzying emptiness, a physical weakness that makes the world feel unsteady. She watches a guard eat a bar of chocolate, unwrapping the foil with casual indifference. He takes a bite and chews slowly, his eyes scanning the prisoners. To Annalise, that small brown rectangle is an object of almost religious significance. It represents a world of plenty, a life without want that feels as distant as the moon. The casualness with which he consumes it is a profound display of power. He has everything. They have nothing. A low murmur runs through the crowd. A vehicle is approaching. Not a tank or a half-track, but a 2.5-ton GMC truck, splashing through the muddy snow. It grinds to a halt near the entrance of the courtyard. The canvas flap at the back is thrown open. Two soldiers jump down and begin unloading wooden crates. For a moment, no one understands. Then the word ripples through the German prisoners, a whispered current of disbelief and desperate hope. Essen. Food. The prisoners surge forward, a ragged wave of gray uniforms, only to be stopped by guards shouting and brandishing their rifles. Get back! Back! Annalise is pressed forward by the weight of the crowd, her feet barely touching the ground. The raw, primal desperation is terrifying. These were disciplined soldiers only yesterday. Now they are a hungry mob. Officers shout uselessly for order. The Americans set up a makeshift line, using a fallen beam as a barrier. They will distribute the rations in an orderly fashion, or not at all. The crowd slowly, reluctantly obeys. A tense, fragile order is established. The prisoners form ragged lines, their eyes fixed on the crates with a burning intensity. Annalise finds herself in one of the lines, her heart pounding. The smell of the Americans' coffee from earlier floods her memory. What could be in those boxes? Black bread? Potato soup? Anything. At this point, anything would be a feast. She watches as the first crate is pried open. It is not filled with bread or soup. It is filled with small, rectangular tin cans. K-rations. She has never seen one before. A guard picks one up, examines it, and tosses it to the first man in line. The process has begun.
Sergeant Frank Miller hefts another crate of K-ration dinner units onto the makeshift table, the wood groaning under the weight. His shoulders ache. His feet are numb with cold. All he wants is a cup of hot coffee and 5 minutes where no one is shooting at him, or surrendering to him, or starving in front of him. He looks out at the sea of gray-clad prisoners. Their eyes follow his every move, hungry and wary, like a pack of stray dogs. He feels a pang of something he doesn't want to name. Pity, maybe. It's a dangerous emotion in a war. He pries the lid off the crate with the butt of his trench knife. Inside, the small, waxed cardboard boxes are packed tight. Each one contains a simple, life-sustaining meal, designed by scientists for maximum utility. He sees the line of women, separate from the men, huddled against the wall. They look like frightened birds, their faces smudged and pale. He remembers pulling them from that bunker. He remembers the dead one by the radio. He grabs a handful of the K-ration boxes and walks over to them, bypassing the men's line. A few of the male prisoners grumble, but a hard look from Miller silences them. Here, he says, his voice flat. He doesn't know the German for food or eat. He just pushes the boxes into their hands. Annalise flinches as the American sergeant approaches. He is tall, imposing, his face shadowed by his helmet. His eyes, though, are not cruel. They are just tired. He thrusts a small box into her hands. It is surprisingly heavy. On the front, in English, it reads, U.S. Army Field Ration K, Dinner Unit. The box is sealed with wax, a testament to a level of industrial care she hasn't seen in years. Her fingers, stiff and numb with cold, struggle with the packaging. She fumbles, nearly dropping it. Ilse, beside her, is already tearing at hers with her teeth, her movements frantic. Annalise forces herself to be calm. She peels back the cardboard layers. Inside, she finds a packet of biscuits, a small fruit bar, a packet of sugar, and a flat olive drab tin can. There is no label, only stark black lettering stenciled on the side. Corned pork loaf with carrot and apple. Pork. The word itself sounds foreign, decadent. For years, meat has been a rare luxury, stringy, rationed, and often replaced with sawdust-filled sausage. The idea of pork, in a can, given to her by the enemy, is bewildering. A wave of suspicion, a deeply ingrained reflex from years of propaganda, washes over her. Is it poison? A trick? She looks at the sergeant. He has moved on, handing out more rations, his face impassive. She looks at the other women. They are all staring at their cans, a mixture of fear and ravenous hunger on their faces. A small key is soldered to the bottom of the can, a winding key for opening it. Such a simple, clever design. She works the key onto the metal tab, her fingers clumsy. The metal is cold against her skin. With a great effort, she begins to turn it. A thin strip of metal spirals away from the can with a soft tearing sound. The noise is intimate, terrifying. With each turn, the scent grows stronger. It is not the familiar scent of German cooking. It is something else entirely. Rich, salty, savory, with a strange, faint sweetness underneath. It is an alien aroma, but it speaks a universal language to her empty stomach. Her mouth floods with saliva. The hunger is now a roaring fire, overriding all other thoughts. Poison or not, she has to eat. The lid comes free. She peers inside. The contents are a strange pinkish gray, flecked with orange and pale yellow. It is not beautiful. It looks like nothing she has ever seen before. It is a dense, homogeneous loaf of pressed meat and vegetables. She has no fork, no spoon. She uses her fingers, digging a small piece out of the can. It is soft, slightly greasy to the touch. She raises the morsel to her lips. Her hand is trembling. I can feel the eyes of the other women on her, all of them caught in the same moment of terrified, desperate anticipation. This is it. The culmination of the battle, the surrender, the long, cold wait. It all comes down to this single, greasy piece of American pork in a ruined schoolyard in the heart of her dying country. She closes her eyes and puts the food in her mouth.
The flavor is a detonation. It explodes on her tongue. It is not subtle. It is a tidal wave of salt, of savory, fatty pork, of a deep umami richness that her palate has not experienced in years. The sweetness of apple and carrot is a shocking counterpoint, a ghost of a summer orchard in the middle of a frozen hell. It is overwhelming, dizzying. Annalise freezes, her jaw locked, her eyes wide open. Her entire consciousness contracts to this single, stunning sensory input. The world of concrete bunkers, screaming artillery, and gray skies dissolves. There is only this taste, this impossible, unbelievable taste. Her mind, starved for so long on a diet of watery turnip soup and coarse black bread, does not know how to process the information. It is too much, too rich, too good. It is the taste of a different reality, a world where food is not a desperate necessity, but a source of pleasure, a world without ersatz coffee and sawdust filler, a world of peace. She begins to chew, slowly, mechanically at first, then with a growing awareness. The texture is soft, yielding. The fat coats her tongue, a feeling so luxurious it is almost obscene. She has forgotten what this felt like, this simple, profound act of eating something real, something nourishing. A strange silence has fallen over the courtyard. Annalise looks up from her can. All around her, the other women are in the same state of suspended animation. Ilse, who had been tearing at her ration like a wild animal, is now perfectly still, a piece of the corned pork loaf halfway to her lips, her expression one of utter astonishment.
Another woman, a stern-faced senior auxiliary Annalise didn't know, has her eyes closed as if in prayer. The men, too, the disciplined Wehrmacht soldiers and the grim Volkssturm grandfathers, are all frozen in the same tableau of disbelief. They chew slowly, deliberately, their movements reverent. The frantic, animalistic hunger of a moment ago has vanished, replaced by a stunned, communal awe. For this brief, surreal moment, there are no prisoners and no guards. There is no victor and no vanquished. The entire brutal machinery of the Second World War has ground to a halt in a ruined German schoolyard, stopped dead by a taste. Hunger, fear, hatred, patriotism, despair, all the grand, terrible emotions of the war fade into the background, becoming pale and insignificant. All that matters is the simple, undeniable human reality of food in an empty belly. It is a truce declared not by generals, but by the shared, visceral experience of relief. Sergeant Frank Miller watches from the side, a cigarette dangling from his lips. He has seen this before, in France, in Belgium. He has seen what a simple can of rations can do to a starving population. But this is different. These are the enemy, the women he was trained to see as cogs in the Nazi war machine, the fanatics loyal to a monstrous ideology. But he does not see fanatics now. He sees young women, their faces streaked with dirt and tears, their eyes closed as they savor a mouthful of processed pork. He sees the tension drain from their shoulders, the hard lines of fear and defiance soften around their mouths. He sees their shared humanity, stripped bare of uniforms and ideologies. It is a sight more devastating than any battlefield. Annalise swallows. The food travels down her throat, a warm, solid presence in her hollow core. It is the first truly satisfying thing she has felt in years. And with that warmth, the dam of her composure, so carefully constructed through months of bombing raids and retreats, finally breaks. A single hot tear escapes her eye and traces a clean path through the grime on her cheek. It is not a tear of sorrow for her lost cause, or of fear for her uncertain future. It is a tear of pure, overwhelming physical relief. The taste of the corned beef still lingers on her tongue, a salty, savory promise that even at the absolute end of everything, a moment of simple, quiet grace is still possible.